In 1920s Japan, economic desperation forced families to make impossible choices. When rice harvests failed and factory jobs disappeared, parents would transfer custody of their young daughters, sometimes as young as 5, to geisha districts for substantial payments that could support entire households. These children weren't being prepared for the roles most people assume. They were entering a complex cultural system that would reshape every aspect of their identity, their legal status, their family connections, their economic independence, and their personal autonomy. The reality of geisha training reveals something far more complex than popular culture suggests about tradition, survival, and social control in early modern Japan. Good evening, fellow listener. Picture this. You open your eyes in Kyoto, 1925. You're 5 years old and your father has just signed papers that change everything. Not because he's heartless, because the rice harvest failed and your older brother needs medicine. This payment could feed a family for months, or secure one girl's training in traditional arts. The woman who will oversee your education doesn't look stern. She wears an elegant kimono and speaks in cultured tones. She runs an okiya, a traditional house for entertainers, in Gion district. She examines your features like someone selecting precious materials, checking for grace and for potential for promise. She has the right qualities, she says, and hands your father an envelope. He doesn't look back as he leaves. You'll learn later that parents who hesitate often change their minds, and the house owners have policies for managing that. Your new companions, misons, that's what you must call them, range from 6 to 16. The younger ones have bruised shins from practicing movement on wooden platforms. The older ones have necks painted white as porcelain masks. None of them complain anymore. You'll learn not to complain either. Tears ruin the makeup. The house mother, who you must now call mother, explains your future with professional clarity. You're now a maiko, an apprentice in traditional entertainment. For the next decade, you'll train in dance, music, conversation, and the art of sophisticated companionship. If you're talented and graceful, you'll make your formal debut at 15. If you're not, you'll assist others in this same house, maintaining the silk garments of those who succeeded where you struggled. But here's what she doesn't mention, what no one explains until much later. Your formal debut, your coming-of-age ceremony, will be sponsored by a patron, not chosen by you, selected by whoever offers the most generous support at private gatherings attended by Kyoto's wealthiest men. The sponsorship fees won't be yours. Nothing will ever truly belong to you. Let's understand the economic trap you've just entered. Every grain of rice you eat, every piece of silk you wear, every lesson you receive, it all goes into your debt ledger. By the time you're 15, you'll owe the okiya roughly 15,000 yen. That's more than most Japanese men make in a lifetime. Your kimono alone, the formal one you'll wear for your debut, costs 1,000 yen. The white makeup that will erase your face, made from nightingale droppings and lead, it costs more per ounce than gold and slowly poisons you with every application. The dancing lessons from the Iamoto, the hereditary Grand Master, cost 50 yen per session. You attend 6 sessions a week. The shamisen lessons, the tea ceremony training, the flower arrangement classes, and each has its price, each adds to your debt. But here's the truly insidious part. Even if you become successful, even if rich patrons shower you with gifts, the accounting always ensures you remain in debt. The okiya takes 100% of your earnings until you're 21, then they take 80%, then 60%. The math is designed so that freedom remains perpetually out of reach. The anthropologist Liza Dalby, the only Western woman to ever train as a geisha, documented how this system worked. In the 1970s, yes, this system continued that long, no. She found women in their 60s still paying off debts from when they were 6 years old. Some girls try to escape, they never get far. The okiya owners have agreements with the police, the train stations, the borders of the district. Runaway girls are returned and punished. Not physically, that would damage the merchandise. The punishment is added debt. Every day you're gone costs 1,000 yen. Every person who helps search for you adds their fee. Freedom becomes mathematically impossible. Your transformation begins immediately. First, they change your name. You're no longer whatever your parents called you. You're now Sayuki or Mamehana or some other combination of syllables that sounds elegant and means nothing. Then comes the physical modification. Your eyebrows are plucked completely off, replaced with ones painted higher on your forehead to create the illusion of a longer face. Your teeth, this is where it gets disturbing, are painted black. Ohaguro, they call it. The iron-based dye that turns teeth black also rots them, ensuring that by 30, most geishas have dentures. But the real transformation happens to your body. You learn to walk with your knees together, tiny steps that make you appear to glide. This ruins your hips. Most retired geishas can barely walk by 50. You learn to sit in Caesar position for hours, cutting off circulation to your legs until the nerves die. You'll never feel your feet properly again. The kimono itself is a torture device. Weighing up to 20 kilograms, it's tied so tightly you can barely breathe. The obi, the belt, are pulled until your ribs crack. This isn't accidental. A geisha who can't breathe deeply can't speak loudly. She can only whisper, giggle, speak in the high, childlike voice that patrons find charming. Your neck becomes your primary erotic zone. It's the only skin you're allowed to show. Painted white with 3 lines left bare at the nape, Sansujitori, meant to resemble the vagina. Every aspect of your appearance is calculated to be sexually suggestive while maintaining the fiction of artistic purity. But here's what they don't tell tourists. The white makeup contains lead and mercury. By 25, your skin underneath is destroyed. By 30, you look 50 without makeup. By 40, if you live that long, the accumulated poison has affected your brain, your kidneys, your ability to have children. Though that last part doesn't matter since geishas aren't allowed to have children anyway. You're 15 now. 10 years of training have transformed you from a farmer's daughter into something carefully crafted. Not quite artist, not quite servant, not quite free. Tonight marks your formal debut, the raising of the banner, though what's really being raised is your market value. The negotiations have been ongoing for weeks, though you're kept unaware of the details. Wealthy men, industrialists, politicians, sometimes even religious leaders, have been discussing arrangements with your house mother. They have reviewed your portfolio, learned your accomplishments, received assessments of your demeanour, your skills, your suitability for patronage. The chosen patron contributes 18,000 yen. That's enough to purchase 3 houses in Kyoto. He's 53 years old, owns textile factories, has a wife and 4 children. You'll meet him in a private room above a restaurant where these ceremonies traditionally occur. There's a physician present, not for your well-being, but to verify your status before the formal transition. What transpires in that room remains unspoken, always. But the senior entertainers, those who've experienced this passage, share quiet guidance. Control your expressions to avoid displeasure. Focus on decorative details to find mental distance. Remember that tomorrow brings elevated status and better meals. It's presented as an achievement. The word geisha literally means arts person, and everyone maintains the narrative that this concerns artistic patronage. But the debut system reveals a darker reality. This involves ownership, the commodification of young women disguised as cultural ceremony. The man who sponsors your debut often becomes your danna, your exclusive patron, essentially securing privileged access while you continue entertaining other clients professionally. But here's what's truly unsettling. This isn't distant history. The formal debut system was only officially prohibited in UP 58. There are women alive today who experience this transition. They don't discuss it openly. In Japan, discretion is considered virtue. If you're finding these hidden truths about history as shocking as I do, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content that reveals what really happened behind the beautiful facades. Comment below to let me know where you're listening from. I'm particularly curious if anyone's been to Kyoto and visited the Gion district. What you see there now is sanitized for tourists. The real history is much darker. Now let's return to our story. The paradox of being a geisha is that you must appear perpetually happy while being systematically destroyed. You master the art of the false smile, the muscles in your face trained to hold an expression of joy for hours, while your feet bleed in your wooden shoes and your ribs ache from the crushing obe. You learn to pour sake with movements so precise they're almost religious. The angle of your wrist, the height from which the liquid falls, the way you present the cup. Each gesture takes months to perfect. But watch closely and you'll notice the sake pourer's hand often trembles. Not from nervousness, from malnutrition. Geishas are kept deliberately underfed. A hungry woman is a compliant woman. The games you play with customers are revealing. Konpira funa funa, where you match hand movements to a song, getting faster and faster until someone makes a mistake and must drink. The drunker the men get, the more likely they are to lose, the more they pay. You're not allowed to get drunk. You've learned to hold sake in your mouth and spit it into your sleeve when no one's looking. But here's what really breaks the girls: the emotional labour. You must remember every patron's name, their wife's birthday, their business troubles, their sexual preferences. You laugh at their jokes, no matter how many times you've heard them. You act fascinated by their stories of quarterly earnings. You become a mirror that reflects back only what they want to see. The novelist Arthur Golden interviewed dozens of former geishas for his book. One told him, "We were trained to have no self, no opinions, no preferences, no personality except what the customer wanted to see. After years of this, you forget who you were before. You become the mask." Inside the okiya, relationships between geishas are complex. You're competitors for patronage, but also the only people who understand your reality. The girl who teaches you to apply makeup might also steal your best client. The one who comforts you after your Mizuage might spread rumours that lower your value. There's a strict hierarchy. The most senior geisha, the kimono-clad queen of this small kingdom, has privileges: first choice of kimono, the best room, the right to torture newer girls under the guise of training. She earned these through decades of suffering, and she'll make sure you suffer equally. But there's also unexpected tenderness. Late at night, when the patrons are gone and the makeup is off, you see each other's real faces, scarred from years of lead paint, prematurely aged, eyes that have seen too much. Sometimes a senior geisha will secretly pay off part of a younger girl's debt, knowing she'll never be thanked, knowing she's condemning herself to another year of servitude. The saddest are the toshigoros, the geishas who've aged out at 30 but have nowhere else to go. They become servants in the same houses where they once reigned, washing the underwear of their replacements, watching new 5-year-olds arrive with the same tears they once cried. Some geishas form romantic relationships with each other, the only genuine affection in their lives. But if discovered, they're separated and sold to different houses. Love, like everything else, is a luxury they can't afford. If you're beautiful and talented enough, you might acquire a dana, a patron who pays all your expenses in exchange for exclusive access to you outside working hours. This sounds like rescue, but it's actually another trap. Your dana pays off your debt to the okiya, but now you owe him instead. He decides where you live, what you wear, who you can speak to. He might visit once a month or every night. He might be gentle or violent. You have no say. The okiya owner still takes her percentage of the arrangement. The dana's wife knows about you. In Japanese upper-class society, this is expected. You might even serve tea at his house while his wife watches, everyone maintaining the fiction that you're merely an entertainer. His children call you aunt. You'll never have children of your own. Pregnancy means retirement and abortion is routine. Some danas are possessive, forbidding their geisha from entertaining other customers. This sounds like privilege, but it's economic death. Without regular work, you lose your skills, your reputation, your value. When he eventually tires of you, and they always do, you have nothing. The most successful geisha in history, Mineko Iwasaki, wrote about having to refuse dozens of marriage proposals from wealthy men. Not because she didn't want to marry, but because geishas who marry are expelled from the community, lose their artistic lineage, and can never practice their art again. After 20 years of training, you're qualified for nothing else. The energy begins to soften now, preparing for sleep. Today, tourists pay for a geisha experience in Kyoto. They dress in synthetic kimonos, have their faces painted white by teenagers, and take selfies. They think they're experiencing Japanese culture. They're experiencing a sanitized fantasy. The real geishas, perhaps 1,000 remain in all of Japan, are dying out. Modern girls have options their grandmothers didn't, but the system hasn't really changed. Young women still enter as teenagers, still accumulate unpayable debts, still cannot marry or have children if they want to remain geishas. The government calls them living national treasures, preserving traditional arts. But what's really being preserved? Shamisen music and classical dance? Or the systematic exploitation of women repackaged as cultural heritage? Western fascination with geishas reveals our own disturbing appetites. We romanticize their suffering, eroticize their submission, consume their pain as entertainment. The best-selling novel Memoirs of a Geisha was written by a white American man. The movie starred Chinese actresses. The real geisha who inspired it sued for violation of privacy. She lost. In Gion today, signs in multiple languages ask tourists not to photograph geishas. Travellers ignore them, chasing these women through streets like they're Disney characters rather than humans. The geishas have learned to walk quickly, faces down, disappearing into unmarked doorways. They're still performing invisibility, still trying to exist without taking up space. Your breathing slows as we approach the end of this story. The last traditional okiya are closing. The buildings are being converted to hotels where tourists can sleep in rooms where generations of girls cried themselves to sleep. The kimonos are in museums, behind glass. Their weight and her suffocation now just historical curiosities. But the debt system continues in new forms. Japanese hostess clubs operate on similar principles. Young women accumulating impossible debts, pouring drinks for businessmen, maintaining the fiction that this is about conversation. The Yakuza run many of these establishments. The police look away. Tradition, they say. The Mizuage may be officially illegal, but sponsorship arrangements between wealthy men and young entertainers follow the same pattern. The payment is just structured differently. The girl is technically free to refuse. Technically. Your eyes grow heavy as the truth settles in. Some former geishas have written memoirs breaking decades of enforced silence. They describe lives of extraordinary beauty and extraordinary suffering intertwined so tightly they can't separate them. They master arts that take lifetimes to perfect. They also lose their names, their families, their ability to exist as individuals. The ones who escaped through marriage, through patron death, through sheer determination, often can't adjust to normal life. They've been trained since childhood to be ornamental. They don't know how to have opinions, make choices, exist without an audience. Freedom, when it comes, feels like another kind of prison. As sleep approaches, let these questions drift through your mind. What is the true cost of beauty? Not just for the one who embodies it, but for the culture that demands it. Every floating world has its anchors, the suffering that holds the beautiful illusion in place. The geisha's white face paint that slowly poisoned her. The crushed ribs that created the perfect silhouette. The trained smile that never wavered even as tears ran beneath the makeup. We preserve these traditions in museums and call it culture. We buy coffee table books of geisha photography and call it art. We watch movies about their suffering and call it entertainment. But we never ask the real question. Why did we need them to suffer so beautifully? The story fades like incense smoke in a Kyoto tea house. Perhaps the most honest thing ever said about geishas came from one who escaped life at 45. Asked if she missed anything about being a geisha, she thought for a long moment before answering. I miss having no choices. When every decision is made for you, you never have to face who you really are. The floating world was never meant to be real. It was a dream men paid to enter, and women were paid to maintain. But every dream has its dreamer, and every performance has its cost. The last true geisha will die within our lifetime, taking with her secrets that were never meant to be spoken. The tourists will keep coming to Gion, photographing women in costume who pretend to be what the real ones were. The myth will outlive the reality. But sometimes, fellow listener, the myth is all we really wanted anyway. Sweet dreams.